I just wanted to show you how my dahlias are getting on, and I wonder how yours are getting on. If you've watched other videos, you'll know that I've changed the way that I've started some of my dahlias this year to try to get ahead and get some flowers sooner than usual. So these in particular, I've really pulled the stops out. The first few are cafe dahlias, and I started those off under heat back in February, and potted them on as soon as I could in the polytunnel, and they're doing fine. Cafe do tend to be a little bit slow in putting their buds out and flowers out, but the next ones along here are preference, which are rather faster usually, and we use those all the time for general cutting of for bouquets, etc. And if you remember, these preference were started under heat back in March, so I kept these tubers were potted up and kept in the propagation room under heat to get them started nice and early. So these are my early preferences, and as you can see, we've got buds starting up already there. So with some luck I will have some blooms to go into bouquets within just over a week, I hope. And we're now the 11th of June, so we're a few weeks ahead of what you would say is normal for dahlias. Reason being that we want to get them into our stock to sell on as quickly as possible. So they're my preference early starters. They're my cafe au lait early starters. I'll have a look now at the others which were started at the inverted commas normal time. So we'll put those into pots. The ones I'm going to show you now traditionally was the 1st of April, but I've started these off a little bit. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. They were put into pots on the 1st of April and the week after that, so they are inverted commas normal. So here we are out in the main beds, and these are my again preference dahlias, so same variety as the ones we just looked at in the big polytunnel, and these were started into their pots as tubers on the 1st of April. As you can see, they're a little bit smaller, but once again they've got some buds on there. There's some buds on those, so although they're a little bit smaller, a little way behind perhaps the polytunnel ones, they're still doing quite well. It's important to not let the roots dry out, so I'm watering these not just with the tube watering here, the drip tube, which gives us a sort of background irrigation, but also by hand. I'm watering these by hand when I think they need it. So those are preference plus another 7 or 8 varieties in there. Fairly happy with those, although the conditions have been pretty dire really. It's been very, very hot indeed, and we've had no rain now for 5 weeks, not a single drop of rain for 5 weeks, and the temperatures are well up into the over 20s. So these poor things are doing their best to grow on for us. I'm just watering them at the moment and watching them, and I'm hand weeding, and when they get a little bit bigger, sometimes I might take off some of the lower shoots away from the ground, and I'll then put a mulch on the ground, a simple grass cutting mulch, which is what I usually use. It protects the ground from drying out and also keeps the weeds down to some degree. So that's my plan for that, for these, within the next week or two, and hopefully these will be in full production, giving us flowers within about 2 weeks, maybe 3. These are some cafe au laits which I planted in a small raised bed we've got here, and they do well in a raised bed. the conditions can be controlled somewhat, and the drainage is always better. So I've got my favourite capiolates here in this raised bed. As you can see, I've been watering them, and we've got the beginnings of the support system up there with some canes alongside. I'm going to use pea netting as well, and also corral them to protect them, because a storm comes along, it can damage your whole stock in one go. So I'll be doing my best to protect these, and we'll talk about that as time goes on, various ways of protecting and supporting your dahlias to reduce the risk of damage. Now these guys were left behind because they hadn't developed enough, so when I planted out all the dahlias 1st of April through till about the 7th or 8th of April, these were a little way behind the others, so I've kept them in the polytunnel and nurtured them to get them going, and doing quite well now, so they're just about ready to go into the ground. So I'll be planting those out pretty soon. And these here are the out and out failures, so these are tubers which simply didn't get started along with the others. There's around about, I think, 17 or so that didn't start, so out of 180 or so dahlias that we got going, that's around about 10% that failed. For one reason or another, often the soil is a little bit wet, and the physiology doesn't get started, perhaps because the temperatures weren't quite right, so that the roots rot under those conditions. It's a tricky time for them to decide whether to get started or not, and some simply don't, so a failure rate of 10% of tubers in pots is not so bad actually. So I'm quite pleased with that. I kept these aside because I thought I might do a video talking about why some tubers fail, and I yet might do that. I'm not sure. See if I've got time. So there we are. Well, these are my dahlias and their state of play. Currently it's now the 11th of June, and I've shown you all my dahlias at the various stages that they're at. I'd really like to hear from you to know how yours are doing, so if you would like to comment, that would be nice. And I hope that video was useful for you, and I look forward to seeing you for the next video. So bye for now.